There is this terrifying tendency in human psychology to justify whatever it is that makes us abnormal, and sometimes whatever it is that makes our family abnormal, by claiming that it's something that, in fact, secretly, we have in common with all mankind. And this is becoming harder to see in the era of the internet, because the internet, by its nature, invites us all to stand up and add our voice to the cacophony. It invites us all to come out and celebrate the ways in which we're abnormal. It's normalizing abnormality, and in many ways, that's a wonderful thing. The traits that made you feel uncomfortable in the classroom with your classmates, the traits that singled you out to be bullied, possibly by your own brothers and sisters, those can become the traits that make you, in some small measure, famous here on YouTube. And they can be the traits that attract a small but significant following, or even just a friend group around you, whether it's on YouTube, Instagram, or any other platform. We live through an era where people want to stand up and declare, as never before, exactly in what way they're abnormal and why, and they want to show that they're not ashamed of it. But a great many of us are ashamed of our abnormalities, and our way of rationalizing it, our way of even concealing from ourselves how abnormal we are, is by going out and trying to convince others that this abnormality is a uniform aspect of the human condition that everyone else is suffering with. How many million of us will have to face up to the fact that either we would make terrible parents, or that we already are terrible parents, or, more humiliating still, maybe there was a time in our lives when we could have been a good parent, but now it is forever past. I remember talking very seriously with one friend of mine. He was 51 years old at the time and looking at getting married and having a child. Just talking through with him, well, look, the baby is born when you're 55, 10 years old when you're 65, going through teenage problems when you're around 70. Are you sure you can do this? Are you sure you're cut out for this? Are you sure you're the right man for the job now, and 10 years from now, and 20 years from now? And maybe you were 20 years ago, right? I remember having a very down-to-earth conversation with a guy who had lost one leg in an accident. Not just at the knee, but right up at the top of the leg. His leg had been amputated. And completely down-to-earth way, he had to reflect. He had a new wife, and she wanted to have a child or children with him. If you literally can't get up and walk after your child, it's just a physical disability, and it's not hereditary. The kid isn't going to inherit having only one leg. Well, yeah, maybe you're looking at that in a very different way, when now you know how difficult it is for you to go to the bathroom without someone helping you get up and go, and you may be in the position of helping someone else. Okay, now you have to look at that from a different perspective. Well, what if the reason why you can't have a child, or you shouldn't have a child, is psychological? What if it's intellectual? What if it's emotional? What if it's ethical? And what if it's philosophical? What if you're just committed to a view of the world, a set of opinions and beliefs that really disqualify you for parenthood, either because they reveal that you're a terrible person, or because they've made you into a terrible person with the passage of time? Isn't it easier to claim that everyone is abnormal in just the same way that you are? Isn't it easier to claim that everyone would make a terrible parent, instead of looking in the mirror and really reckoning with the extent to which you are abnormal, and you may be making the right decision by refusing to have or raise children yourself. But you're making the wrong decision in blaming others. You're making the wrong decision in vilifying all parents, or frankly, vilifying the whole human species, when instead what you need to do is recognize your own position within the species with all due humility. What you need to do is stop blaming others for faults that lie within yourself. Now, I have been on both sides of this kind of argument. If you've got really good eyesight, you'll notice there's a poster in the background there related to learning the Chinese language. I've sat down with seemingly intelligent people and explained, look, I just can't learn Chinese and I can't go any further with my career in Chinese, Asian studies, politics, and history of Asia because the university system is so bad. And I've had people turn around and use this kind of argument against me like, oh, you're casting aspersions on others. You're blaming others for problems when the fault lies with you yourself. That's a long conversation to have. My point here is just to note, I realize how insincere this can be. I realize that this can become gaslighting in the parlance of our times. Okay? The passion with which anti-natalists argue against sexual reproduction in principle, parenthood in principle. All right? I am making the claim here that it is, in the strictest sense of the term, insane. And there's a subtle distinction I just draw your attention to. All right? I couldn't find a university, and I couldn't find a university professor that was good enough for me, for my standards, to spend tens of thousands of dollars and years of my life getting a master's degree and a PhD. I couldn't find that. And I'm interested in engaging in a critique of the institution of the university. And some of you may be sincerely interested in engaging in a critique of the institution of marriage, a critique of the institution of kindergarten and primary school and parenthood in some sense. Right? I'm not out here in this bitter, vicious, vitriolic way, heaping scorn on other people who have found a university that was good enough, who have found a professor, who have found a PhD supervisor who's good enough for them. I'm happy for them. Right? And I know people like that, whether they're right or wrong, right? I'm happy for them. It would be a significant step closer to madness and a significant step closer to the type of madness the anti-natalists are guilty of if I were instead arguing that nobody anywhere can learn Chinese, that nobody anywhere should learn Chinese, or that, the whole system is a giant conspiracy, it's a scam, these people are lying, that it's somehow immoral for anyone who disagrees with me and takes a path other than my own even to exist. I don't know if I should make videos like this once a year or once a month, frankly. But I think for everyone in my audience, if you just look back at the last 5 years, you've known somebody committed to anti-natalism. You've known someone who's embraced this set of excuses, and you've watched them over time. You've seen how it changes their opinion of themselves and their evaluation of others. And what I'd like to suggest to you is that anti-natalism is either a symptom of madness or leads to madness. Because these are people who would prefer to be insane. They would prefer their own insanity to taking up the fundamentally humble and humiliating position of being happy for others. Saying, oh, you've decided to have kids, you're raising kids, and it's going great. I'm so happy for you. And to just admit that whatever your own reasons are for why you couldn't have children or why you shouldn't have children, they may be psychological, they may be ethical, they may be intellectual, they may be philosophical, that those reasons don't apply to everyone else, They don't define what's normal, or let alone universal, for human nature on planet Earth. They are, in fact, traits that mark you out as abnormal. And you have to find a way forward. You have to find a way to lead a meaningful life that contributes positively to the rest of humanity with that awareness of your own abnormality.
And you guys just think that it's fine to keep reproducing. I mean, I get it if you're in a place where there's the male apes are like wanting to spread their seed in the women, and like societally you have no way to say no. And like guys are the most oppressive characters of all, because they're the ones wanting to come inside of us and impregnate women so they can keep their family line going, their shitty DNA. And you know what? You know who the one suffers is? The women.
All right, so I did get a couple of people. One an email, and this post by Anti-Gaia about some guy, Isol Mazazard, made some video talking about anti-natalism.
À-bas-le-ciel.
I don't know what the hell that was, but it's disturbing in this context of this conversation that you would just play something like that with video game music where you're playing again with real critters' welfare. So whatever that game was, whatever that experiment was, clearly it wasn't very nice to impose that on those little monkeys, was it? But you don't care. Torture anything. Everything is bullshit to be tortured by you because it's entertaining somehow. Fuck you.
You know why I think our species is so fucked? Because people bring people here on planet Earth, and then they have to take care of themselves for fucking ever. Like, parents, you're assholes. You're assholes to do that to somebody. You expect your kid to figure out how to take care of itself without even asking the kid first if he even wants to do this shit.
Is that going to be your excuse till you're 65 years old? You're an adult now. What is romantic and what is not is up to you. Your parents may have told you that dandelions were poisonous. You're an adult now. You know better. You can make dandelion tea. You can make dandelion wine. You can grow a whole garden full of dandelions.
Oh, geez. He's talking about dandelions now. Tea.
Look, I just want to say, for some reason that always shocked people when I said that. They just never thought of it. When people ask me, do you want to have kids? Obviously, before I had a kid, I would just say it depends on the woman I'm with.
Yeah.
Because, when I was with my blonde ex-girlfriend, we were together for years. Like, we might as well have been married. It was that kind of close, long-term relationship. But with her, I would have never had kids. I think she would have been a terrible parent. And, et cetera. It was just no.
So he rifles through relationships, right? So let's get this straight. And he thinks he's got it now. So this one he's got under control now. Yeah, sure. And if we really took the average human being, if I could actually make an average human being, you probably wouldn't invite him over for dinner. And that's the truth. You would find him fat and stupid and a lot of things, because that's what the average is. And so why are you supporting something that on average really doesn't turn out that well?
60% of the time, it works every time.
I didn't think she'd blame the world for why they don't have kids. See, I don't see it that way at all. I think it's a judgment call about who you are.
I didn't watch either.
Right, okay. So, yes, obviously, so somewhere in this video, they made some statement about the fact that, look, the planet Earth is doomed. Some generation's going to be stuck with the liability. There's every prospect that human beings, there's no evidence that we're doing the peaceable thing. So we're just going to escalate the violence. And sooner or later, a generation's going to live where a nuclear bomb goes off again. And it could be the next generation. And so I'm going to have a kid and place him in a world where nuclear bombs are going to start going off. Because I am a generous person. Yeah. Nuked Japs, dying of radiation sickness. 50 million people just disposed of in the prime of their lives, just disposed of in ugly, horrible ways, raped to death, all kinds of horrible things happened in the war. And then the war of just living a life, living a grunt life in the modern society where everything is just so tacky, so superficial, so artificial. Our lives have just absolutely no genuine purpose because we're just here to screw each other over, to steal money in some way. I mean, to steal value. It's just disgusting to marginalize. And you're saying there's some reason to force a kid to play that ugly game. This ugly game should be perpetuated. Why would you perpetuate this ugly a game? I wouldn't impose it on a robot. I wouldn't impose it on a horseshoe. I wouldn't impose it on anything. Well, except an asshole like you, maybe, if I could. Because you deserve it. So all I have to do is convince you to understand that the only game you're playing on this tightrope is don't fall off. You're just playing the don't fall off game. There's no winning to walking the tightrope. There's only winning in not falling off, not getting cancer, not getting malaria, not getting humiliated, not being a fool, not being an asshole, not being neurotic and insane, and not being tortured in death many times over, dying more than once. These are the wins. Not dying more than one time. That's a big win. If I can avoid dying 5 or 6 times, that would be excellent. That's the win, idiot. So why walk the stupid tightrope? You can't win. All you're doing is risking losing.
A guy wrote into me.
Oh, good. This is an answer to a question. Oh, wow. How cool is that?
Very, very sincerely overwrought over the ethical and philosophical issues raised by the anti-natalists. Now,
overwrought. It's just amazing. Well, anyway, I mean, of course, when you're raised by a culture that keeps telling you it's worth it, the gold medal is worth it. Everybody needs a gold medal. I mean, it doesn't matter what the preposterous thing is. You got to win a gold medal. So it doesn't matter how stupid it is. Like, how many times in a row can you hit yourself in the head with your fist in 1 minute? Yeah, just find something. Try to do it really, really good so you can win the gold medal. And that means somebody else didn't win it. And he'll be all sad and go, I didn't win. And that's bad, but who cares? The game is about me winning. The game isn't about how stupid it is to sit there and say, let's just change the name of the asshole on top of the asshole pile. We have a big pile of shit. Let's just change the name. We have the wrong name is on the shit. So we have to put your name on the shit because the wrong name is on the pile of shit. The king of the shit is the wrong king of the shit. You need to be the king of the shit. And that's all that's taking place here. And somebody figures that out and they say, okay, yes, I understand. I've been programmed to climb a mountain of shit to do nothing but put a flag in it that sinks. I mean, yes, this is really a stupid program. Why am I playing this video game? King of the pile of shit. And yes, maybe somebody will have a little bit of cognitive distance when they figure out that that's the game we're playing. And everybody's putting a quarter into this stupid, crazy video game like this makes sense. We should play this idiotic game. Teach your kids how to play King of the Pile of Shit. No. Suffocate your kids at the, don't wait too long to do it, okay? But yeah, do it.
Oh, Melissa, in the background, she had a period of her life where those questions meant a lot to her.
Blah, 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 blah. Anecdotal, blah, 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 blah. I don't think Melissa had any of those thoughtful periods, frankly. She couldn't live with you if she did. Yeah. She obviously can't smell or think.
I think not these same philosophical questions, but the questions raised by child-free people and anti-natalist people on the internet. There's a reason why this is meaningful to millions of people. It raises questions of how should we live.
Yeah, what means something to people? Again, it's just so, again, the world is such a pile of shit. I mean, all these fake religious people, all these fake pretentious, I know best. I know how to fix the economy. I know how to find free energy. You're all a bunch of fucking idiots. The human race is an idiot. And you're a very nice example of the idiots.
should we or should we not be, resolving to spend our time raising an infant as opposed to doing the various positive things we do?
Well, again, this has nothing to do with any subject I'm terribly interested in about this whole thing of whether or not people should entertain themselves. The question is should you entertain yourself in a manner where you're subjecting risk to somebody else? If you want to entertain yourself by throwing bricks in the air and seeing if you can make them land on your head, then it seems to be your business. So if that's what you want to do with your time, is risk throwing bricks in the air that'll land on your own head, fine. If you're throwing bricks and they're going to land on your ignorant girlfriend's head, that might be questionable. But the idea of throwing bricks, okay, and letting them land on anyone's head, that's really none of your right, okay? You want to fuck your girlfriend, that might be your business, but you have no right to fuck me, bastard. And that's what my parents thought they had. They thought they had a right to fuck me. Well, no, they didn't, okay? They were full of shit, full of ego and bravado and nonsense that I'm going to play God and it'll all turn out wonderfully. Fuck you. That's stupid.
Is it, in fact, net positive or net negative? Is it something selfish that subtracts from the world?
It can't be net positive, as I've pointed out. There's absolutely no logical theory that gets you to a true positive. All you can do is undo negatives. So again, if you want to justify the existence of human beings, you have to explain how they fix something that would be broken if they didn't exist. Hey, we make the universe richer. And it lives in a better house with no leaky roof. We don't do any of that. We're not maintenance men. We're breakermen. We break things. We don't fix things. Our existence, we come into the world breaking, okay? Broken. And all we do is spend the rest of our lives trying to glue ourselves back together. And that's it. We don't accomplish anything. We just bandage our injuries.
To decide to have your own child, or is it something positive that adds to the world? This is not a shallow or simple question, and it's something I know Melissa thought about a great deal before she fell in love with me and basically went baby crazy.
Well, yeah, she drank lead paint. Obviously. Obviously we should go find out where she lived because there's lead in the water and she's fucking retarded.
Wait, sorry. I'm joking around.
Joking around. She's really a lesbian, Wink, wink. You know what that means? I am.
But her position on this is not shallow, but it is true that when she fell in love with me, she had a period of really being baby crazy, which was interesting to see. Where
yeah, it's bizarre, actually. The guy's lost his hair before he was like 16. Genetically, he's tubby and, has good teeth, but otherwise, everything else is a pile of shit. And I want to make more of those. So again, you don't want to make the argument that women are kind of irrational. Well, frankly, there's lots of things that indicate women do have a bit of this irrationality going on. But I really don't want to beat up on women. They have an excuse in the sense of that, they come into the world even more fucked up than we do. The whole period thing. Right?
Deep meditations and reflections, as you were. Anyway.
Oh, whatever. I don't think that ever happened. I don't think you have any evidence your girlfriend ever did anything called thinking meditatively. Never happened. That's just a story you made up. Your girlfriend's obviously an idiot.
Look, I got a sincere question on Patreon from a guy who was really overwrought, not just about the anti-natalist critique.
He's French Canadian. Okay. About
applied to individual people getting pregnant, having babies, those decisions. But in the broader ecological worldview, that sort of step one is the anti-natalists arguing that human beings do so much damage to the world that it would be better for the planet in an abstract sense if human beings didn't exist, or if there were fewer and fewer human beings, ultimately leading to the termination of the human species on Earth. That's one angle. But then I think the necessary kind of ethical and intellectual corollary of that.
Corollary. Ooh, there's a word I didn't have before. Let's see, will I keep it? Corollary. No, fuck it. No, I'm not going to keep that one.
what inevitably follows from this perspective is the view that all life is similarly deeply flawed. So
how ridiculous that anyone would think that a machine that manifests torture could in some way be flawed. Being torture is just part of good machine making to make something that's torturable. Why would I ever make something that wasn't capable of being tortured? I mean, being capable of being tortured is just so cool. Isn't it obvious? To a sadist? Yes, that's it. To a sadist, it's obvious. To everyone else, it's like, what are you talking about? Why add torture if you don't need it? Why put it in there? Why make something that's torturable when you could make something not torturable? Yes, much better idea. I obviously don't have a ton of memories of being an infant, but I do remember that it was always struggly. I mean, it wasn't just happy bliss, happy baby, happy. Those really aren't my memories, okay? I don't have these, I was so happy, smiley, laugh. That really isn't the sense. The sense is that you've got to grind this thing out. You got to fight to make your arms move right. You got to fight to do everything. It's a struggle. And you're applauding that. And I think that's just so fucking sadistic. That's all I can say. You're psychotic. You're really sick. Sick in the head.
You know why I think our species is so fucked? Because people bring people here on planet Earth and then they have to take care of themselves for fucking ever. Like, parents, you're assholes. You're assholes to do that to somebody. You expect your kid to figure out how to take care of itself without even asking the kid first if he even wants to do this shit.
Because I understand evolution, that this is a function of a biological problem of lack of function. That we're just a parasitic infestation on the chemical surface of Earth. And it's just a bunch of little chemical models, little chemical molecules having a competition with each other to take over the world. And that's all that's really happening here. It's just a bunch of little tiny molecules, a certain number, a few billion or trillion little design changes, and they're all struggling to be king of the world. And the trick is that you never can be king of the world, because as soon as you grow enough, then everybody makes you into food. And so it's really impossible to ever take over the world. So you're just constantly fight with each other about who's winning. Oh, we're winning over the dinosaurs, but maybe the dinosaurs will still have a comeback. That's all that's happening here, is our little varieties, the nature of the weapons we use. Like, for a few millennia we use swords, and then we use guns, and then we use sticks, and then we use rocks. We just come up with little different tools to fuck each other over for the silly victory of saying, I am king of a pile of dead bodies.
When I think of babies, happy gurgles and giggles don't come to my mind. I think more whiny, annoying, loud, stinky, smelly, waste of time, life ruiner.
So if you go to a gambling house, all right, and you're going to play dice, and on the dice are skull and crossbones on each dice, and let's say they're 20-sided dice just for fun. And so you think the odds are pretty low, no big deal. But if you get two, snake eyes, two skull and crossbones, a gun pops out of the table and shoots your wife. You still going to gamble? No, well, see, when it's some non-thing, it's a thing in the non-averse, and you're just going to pluck it out. You don't know it yet. You don't know its disposition, its welfare. You don't know its sensitivities. What if I found the thing that your wife fears the most, and the worst possible kind of death, and I put that on the dice? You still going to play the game?
I mean, really, people like to disrespect my crew, but the fact is that you know my name and I don't know you.
Philosophy is about problem solving. Sometimes the problem we need to solve is the attitude that lurks behind an argument, not a specific factual claim, and not a flaw in the explicitly stated argument. The attitude that this YouTuber in Mendham is demonstrating for you here is an attitude that I hear from vegan gains again and again and again. And the attitude is that they, as people who would refuse to have a child ever, that they are doing something bold and brave and defiant, whereas in fact what they're doing is cowardly. And they're trying to justify and normalize their own cowardice through the assertion that everyone shares this trait with them. Everyone is just as averse to these risks, these negative consequences as they are, or anyone who doesn't share their cowardice must be insane. In Mendham seems to think that it's absolutely absurd to take this risk, to risk sudden, violent death at a rate of 1 in 20. He thinks nobody would take that gamble if they knew what they were getting themselves into. In World War I, of Canadian soldiers who served, more than 50,000 died. Very roughly, your odds of being killed be 1 in 12. In World War II, strangely, the statistics are even more vague. I couldn't find out precisely how many people served in the military. Perhaps 1 in 22. Your odds of dying in World War II, if you were born a citizen of Poland, are shockingly, staggeringly terrible. The fate of the Polish people as a whole, both Jewish and Gentile during World War II, will give you nightmares. So it gets much, much worse than these statistics. And some people were cowards. Some people were cowards. And some people found ways to struggle and fight that were not nearly so easy as joining a conventional army that would at least provide you with meals and a place to sleep. You know, some people had to fight in much more terrible circumstances. If your position is there is no risk worth taking at a rate of 1 in 20, that you wouldn't roll the 20-sided dice and risk your own life, you are a coward. And I understand that you want to justify that cowardice by generalizing that cowardice, by saying that all of humanity shares this trait with you, but you're wrong. Having a child takes guts. Having a child involves elements of risk. You have to be bold enough to endure unspeakable suffering. Not everyone should join the army. Not everyone should become a combatant. Not everyone should become a parent. Not everyone has what it takes. And I would never attempt to convince Vegan Gaines that he should become a parent. He would doubtless be a terrible parent. He is doubtless correct in his assessment that he should never have children. But isn't it fundamentally humble, humiliating to stop and reflect that this is something I can't do? This is something you personally can't do. This is something you're lacking, but that others should do, must do, that even perhaps is a little bit heroic when others do it. That's something you might be able to admire in others. No, no, no. What people like in Mendham must do is justify their own ego by vilifying more than 90% of the human race, by saying that everyone else is crazy. Everyone else is crazy because they don't share this fundamental cowardice. There's a philosophically significant contrast between this problem I've been describing and what goes on in the minds of newly converted atheists, people who've just made the transition from American Christianity to American atheism in the 21st century. Let me just pause to disclose, I am myself an atheist, And I am not one of these atheists who has the attitude of whatever makes you happy. Like, you do you. I'm not an atheist who's in favor of spiritualism or spirituality or continuing to celebrate Christmas just so that you can sing songs with your extended family. I am much more of an extreme and uncompromising atheist. But nevertheless, I'm not interested in supporting an atheist movement that's built on a lie any more than I'm interested in supporting a religion that's built on a lie. I'm quite willing and eager to examine the defects and disadvantages of atheism and the attitudes atheism brings into our lives in the same way that I'm willing to examine the defects of religion and the attitudes and assumptions religions bring into our lives. All right? And there is a huge phenomenon in the 21st century. Searching now on YouTube, I couldn't find a single video examining it or discussing it. There probably are videos, and they're probably very censored and hard to find within YouTube. Topic for another video. I couldn't find a single video just now talking about the psychological pattern of people converting from Christianity to atheism and then assuming and then imagining that the most heroic thing they can do is live a life of sensual indulgence, live a life devoted to sleeping around or seducing other men's wives or engaging in whatever sexual acts were forbidden before, where suddenly they regard it as courageous, heroic, and manly, shall we say, to do all of the things their grandparents would have forbidden them to do before, precisely because their grandparents forbid them to do it before. They're incapable of recognizing that there is a kind of heroism, there is a kind of virtue, there is a kind of self-discipline in being a good person in the absence of that religious tradition their grandparents have. In the absence of the delusions their grandparents subscribe to, nevertheless, they face the same challenge of what it means to be a good person, especially in relation to controlling one's sexual desires or whatever other miscellaneous desires before they subordinated to these ridiculous religious delusions. All right? In the same way, it seems to be very easy for people to convince themselves that there is something heroic about antinatalism, that there is something heroic about refusing to take on the responsibilities of a parent just because their religious tradition, just because their parents and grandparents conditioned them to believe that having a child, that raising a child, that making those sacrifices, that taking on those responsibilities was something they were obliged to do. Okay? In rejecting religious belief, we reject the obligation as irrational. And I would agree that you have no obligation to any God to be, shall we say, sexually a good person, to be self-disciplined in dealing with your desires and the consequences of acting on those desires for yourself and others. You have no obligation to any God. You have an obligation to yourself. You have an obligation to others. You have no obligation to any God, and you have no obligation to your parents, your grandparents, your cultural traditions that may be outside of religion, strictly defined. You have no obligation to your ancestors stretching back thousands of years or any of those values in your family. You have no obligation to anyone to have a child. And yet you should still be able to recognize the type of self-discipline, the type of self-sacrifice, and yes, even the type of heroism that is required, that is involved in making the commitment to have and raise children. When I look at people like Vegan Gaines, when I look at people like Edmendum, and when I look at people who go off the deep end after converting from Christianity to atheism and suddenly have to indulge in sex with prostitutes, use of recreational drugs, in all the things that were forbidden to them before, all right? What I see is a kind of cowardice. What I see, of course, is a reckless lack of self-discipline that they are justifying in their own minds as if it were courage, because for them it's an act of rebellion against these absent grandparents, these absent ancestors, yes, even these absent gods.
Go talk what you like, tell people that it's his name. Cause even saying that I suck means you're still spreading my name.